Salut, and welcome to this French GCSE and iGCSE video tutorial. So in this particular tutorial, we are going through general tips for the French GCSE or iGCSE listening exam. Firstly, just to start off, my name is Dhananjay Talwar, and I studied French and Italian for my MA degree at the University of Cambridge. I graduated in 2015, and I've been an educator and a tutor mostly since then. I've learned more than 20 languages myself to different levels, of course, but at least 9 of those to fluency. And it's a real hobby, a real passion of mine, something that I really try and keep up. I love impressing that on that motivation on other students and that passion as well, and helping them to reach their goals and their target grades in exams. And I've done so already with over 500 students who have achieved or exceeded their target grade in French GCSE or iGCSE while I've been a full-time tutor. I've taught other languages, of course, too. 8 of them so far for GCSE or iGCSE, and some of those at high levels as well. So this is a quick look at the French GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. So as of July 2025, there are 4 exam boards for GCSE French and 2 of them for iGCSE French. Luckily, this video is looking at the listening exam overall, and so it will be relevant for students of any exam board. So regardless of which exam board exactly you're studying, you should be able to get a lot out of this video. These are the different question types that can potentially come up in the listening exam. This is not actually a complete or definitive list, and the question types can change with time, of course, too. But this is quite a complete list of the most common question types that can come up in the listening exam. They include gap fill questions, matching up questions, multiple choice questions, identify the correct statements questions, questions where you've got to answer in English, questions where you have to answer in French, and the dictation. The dictation is very new. That's only for 2 specific exam boards, AQA and Pearson EdXL GCSE, for exams from 2026. And I have a different video on the dictation. So if you're doing that, I highly recommend watching that other video as well. I cover all of the other question types mentioned just above in a separate video again, so definitely worth watching that one as well. But this video is more of an overview of the listening exam and general tips that any student can implement to boost their listening exam marks. Okay, so the French GCSE and iGCSE listening exam is, of course, a timed written paper. The questions are often multiple choice, so you will often have to just select one or possibly more than one correct answer from a series of options. But the questions can also require short written answers in English or in French. Of course, you should be aware of that too. Questions are all, of course, based on an audio for the listening exam. You will hear everything in the audio exactly twice, except if you're doing a dictation. If you are an AQA or Pearson EdXL GCSE student and you have to do a dictation task as well, then every sentence or part of the dictation, you'll hear that exactly 3 times. Otherwise, the majority of students will hear everything exactly twice. The vast majority of questions exactly twice. And you can use that to your benefit as well. So one of the strategies and parts of exam technique it's worth working on is how exactly you're going to use the ability to hear the audio twice. What are you going to do the first time you listen to the audio, and what will you look out for or focus on the second time you hear that same audio? So here are my top tips for the French GCSE or iGCSE listening exam. Firstly, read through the instructions for every question thoroughly. I would try to read through the instructions, and quite carefully as well. You have to make sure that you've taken them in and understood them before the question itself, or before the audio for that particular question has even started. I'd also try and glance through or look through even more fully, if you've got time, the actual options. So many of the questions for listening or reading papers will be multiple choice in nature. You'll have many options written out to choose between, and you should read through those options and make sure you understand what they mean in English, ideally before the audio has even started. That's the best, because then that gives you more time, uh, yeah, and more of an idea of what you're specifically listening out for in the audio once it starts. You should also familiarize yourself with the technique required for every single question type. For each of the most common question types, at least, I have created a different video on that conveniently, so you can simply watch that video as well. Learn topic specific vocabulary. So don't leave out any topics. There are certain topics that tend to be harder, definitely, than others, such as the environment, for instance. It is important to use topic specific vocabulary to learn it so that you can recognize it if it comes up in the audio in your listening exam. Um, and lastly, exam technique makes a huge difference, particularly for papers such as listening or reading. Exam technique can be very significant, but in general, for GCSE and iGCSE exams and languages, exam technique can make a really big difference to students' marks. Um, Scoring highly in a GCSE or iGCSE paper for languages is certainly not just about knowing the language itself well. Even very advanced speakers of that language could make mistakes in these papers as well due to exam technique. So that is the purpose of all of these videos, to make sure that you guys are equipped with the correct exam technique. Some more tips to do with the listening paper. So try to practice understanding the French accent, as spoken by natives, of course, because that is what you'll come across in your listening exam. The audio will, of course, feature uh, French spoken by native speakers, and that usually means people from France or around there. Yeah, French is very widely spoken, but you will not get more remote varieties or non-standard varieties of French at all in the listening paper, as that would make it far more challenging. Um, so try to practice and get used to listening and hearing sort of a standard accent for French from France. That will allow you to train your ear and to be able to identify words more easily, um, and exactly what is being said. Listen out for synonyms. So you may not hear the exact answer that is written down on the paper, particularly if you've got different options to choose from. You may hear the answer in a different form instead, such as a synonym or potentially paraphrased in some way. So watch out for that. Um, yeah, the examiners will try and trick the students a lot of the time. They will often mention every single one of the options in some way. So you've got to be aware of these tricks. Um, yeah, and understand that they can come up. And know that you can't just write down the first answer that you hear. You get to hear the audio twice, or twice for everything except the dictation if you have to do that. So try and make the most of this. There are various techniques for that as well. You could try and get the gist of what you're of the audio the first time, and then focus in on or zoom in more on the details the second time you hear the same thing. Sometimes students do that. You could get down all of the answers you can the first time, and then the second time you listen to the audio, simply focus on the questions that you're still unsure of or the remaining questions. Different students handle it differently, but of course you know that you will get to hear everything apart from the dictation exactly twice, and it's important to be aware of that and to use that to your advantage as much as possible. Time management is very important. For the listening paper, the time management is largely dictated by the audio itself. You have to follow the speed of the audio. There should still be some time for checking, though. I would try and quickly check through each question just after completing it to make sure that you haven't made any silly mistakes or left out any parts of the question, that the answers you've given are fully relevant and you've done what's required, for instance. And if there's time right at the end, there should normally be time to check through your work. I would try and do that as well. And practice in exam conditions and using past paper materials. That goes for all of these papers really, particularly as you get closer and closer to the exam. Okay, in terms of exam technique, which I've mentioned a lot, there are some parts of exam technique that tend to be harder for students, and so I'm going to go through this, go through that in a bit more detail. These are some key pointers for exam technique. So, firstly, make sure to read each question and all of the possible answers very fully. Try and do that before the audio even begins. That gives you more time and it makes you prepared. Essentially, it means that you're prepared for what you could hear in the audio and which answers you have to select. You're fully aware of that. Check through your work very thoroughly after completing the question. I'd certainly try and do this. um, yeah, and of course, don't neglect or don't forget to check over all of your answers, everything at the end. You get to hear the audio twice, so try to make the most of this. For example, yeah, there's various strategies you can employ, but many students will listen out for the gist, the general message of what's being said the first time, and then they'll focus more in the detail on the details the second time they hear the same audio. That can work well. It depends on the student, really. What I would do is closer to example two, which is writing in a non-confirmed answer the first time and confirm it the second time you hear the audio. So I wouldn't confirm my answer, as in I wouldn't write my final answer on the exam paper after hearing the audio just once, unless I was extremely confident that that was the correct answer. I generally wait to confirm it after hearing the audio a second time. And perhaps the first time I hear the audio, I would simply jot down somewhere else on the exam paper as a note to myself what the answer could be based on the first hearing. So that is a technique that worked well for me and has for many of my students. But there are different strategies available depending on your style, what works best for you. Definitely do, though, check how many marks are available for every question, because this is a really good guide for listening and for reading as to how much detail you have to provide. If a question's worth 2 marks, that normally means that you have to give 2 different bits of information. And so giving 1 would not be enough. Giving 3 would be too much because you actually risk losing marks if you provide extra information, if there's a mistake there, for example. I would stick exactly to the number of marks or the pieces of information required, and the number of marks normally indicate that. Always answer in the same language that the question itself is written in. There shouldn't really be any confusion about which language you've got to answer in, because that should be stated very clearly in your question paper for every question. There are still questions that can come up that require you to answer in English and in French. That's definitely the case for many exam boards. But if you're in any doubt at all, you can just follow this rule that you answer in the same language that the question is written in. And lastly, do not leave any question blank. That's something that as a tutor can really be frustrating, because if you leave a question out or if you leave it blank, then you've got, of course, no chance of scoring marks whatsoever. So I would say always have a go, never leave a question blank. There's absolutely no harm in having a go and trying to put down an answer, even if it feels like you're very much just guessing. But especially for multiple choice questions, because by their nature, multiple choice questions give you a decent chance normally of guessing the correct answer. I definitely would never leave a multiple choice question blank. That is pretty scandalous if you do that as a student. I would always have a go. Even if you're really running out of time, I would try and hazard a guess for as many answers as you can. But yeah, ideally you would practice in exam conditions beforehand, and so not be hugely struggling for time in the exam. Okay, here is a quick quiz now on the French GCSE and iGCSE listening exam. So, firstly, how significant exactly is exam technique for the listening exam? I'll give you a bit of time to think about that before showing you the answer. Okay, I'm going to give the answer now. So, as with many of the French GCSE, iGCSE papers, all of them really, Exam technique can make a really big difference to a student's marks. And so understanding the different techniques required for every single question type can be very helpful. I've covered all of the main questions and the techniques and methods required for each of them in a different video. So I really recommend watching that as well. Okay, question 2, true or false? You'll never have to write out an answer in your listening exam. Okay, I'll give you a bit of time to reflect on whether that's true or false. Okay, I'll show you the answer now. So this one is false. Not every single question is multiple choice or requires the student to just tick a box or put a cross next to the correct box. You may well have to write out answers in English or in French. These very much still do come up. They tend to be towards the end of the listening paper or reading paper as well. But yeah, they very much still do come up. Okay, question 3 is also true or false. So you will hear all audios in the listening exam except for the dictation task exactly twice. Is it true? Is it false? Let me give you a bit of time to reflect on that. Okay, you should have decided by now. I will show you the answer. So this one is true. The only exception, of course, is the dictation task, for which you'll hear everything in the audio thrice, 3 times. For everything else in the listening exam, and many students would not necessarily do the dictation task as well if they're not doing AQA or Pearson EdXL GCSE. For everything else, you'll hear it exactly twice. So make sure you're aware of that. And use that fully as well. And question 4, why is it useful to get used to hearing the authentic French accent? I'll give you a bit of time to think about this. Now, again, let me reveal the answer. So, this is, of course, useful because that is the accent used in the audios for the listening exam. Hearing this accent repeatedly can help to know how to identify words and coordinate symbols and sounds. Essentially, by listening to an authentic French accent, even if the content is quite difficult or above your current level, you can train your ear and make it easier to pick up on where one word ends and the next word begins, to identify individual words that are spoken and what is being said. And that largely does come down to time and practice for most students. Okay, if you've got any questions at all, or for more information about personalized help that I offer as well, you can contact me by email, through Facebook or Instagram. And I post on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn every day about my love for languages, of course, trying to inspire more and more people to learn languages, and sharing with them why I'm so passionate about languages. But I also post a lot about GCSE and iGCSE. So you can follow me for more tips on these platforms. I talk a lot about exam technique and how to maximize your marks. I have many resources available, including free resources for French GCSE and iGCSE. And I have a Facebook group as well that I run for French GCSE and iGCSE students and their parents, which is free to join. I do one-to-one classes, group classes, and courses, and more. So if you'd like to know more about any of this, just get in touch.